Hey mama, are you tired of feeling stressed and overwhelmed trying to grow your online business with your babies at home? You desire more flexibility in your day, allowing you to pour into your family, yourself, and your business without running yourself into the ground. Mama, you can build your dream business and do it in a way that fits your current season of life. And I'm going to show you exactly how. Welcome to the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Singletary, daughter of the king, wife, mama of two, and life and business coach for mompreneurs. On this podcast, you will learn business strategies made for mamas just like you, who desire to be successful CEOs and fully present mamas without stress or overwhelm. So whether you're an entrepreneur who transitioned to a mompreneur or a mama turned mompreneur, I am here to support you. So grab your coffee, notebook, and pen, put in those earbuds, and let's dig in. Hey, mama. So there's been lots of talk in the online space lately about, how buying habits have changed and, different things like that. Like things are really shifting. And one of the things that I've noticed, even just in my own buying habits, is that I'm no longer, solely making a purchasing decision based off of somebody's Instagram content. And this is especially for like higher investments and everything. And that is true for a lot of buyers nowadays. Like, we've heard about people being burned by coaches and different things like that. And so buying habits have shifted a lot. And building relationships is so important. And two of the ways that I feel like you really can build strong relationships with your audience is through long form content and email marketing. Especially, I'm a podcast girly. I'm going to tell you podcasting all day, but it doesn't matter if it's podcasts, YouTube, blogging, whatever. But those two platforms are really great for nurturing relationships, really connecting with your people, but also really allowing them to get to know you, to really get a feel for who you are and whether or not you guys will be a good match to work together. And so I am finally so excited to be able to share with you about my newest offer. It's called the Social Detox Accelerator. And what it is, it's a 3-month group program in which I really show you how to leverage podcasting and email marketing to attract, nurture, and convert your dream clients into your offers. And really looking at how to leverage these two platforms to build relationships, build connections with your people. So that way you're not dealing with a lot of the craziness that other businesses are dealing with because they're still relying solely on social media to grow their business. You are creating one evergreen content through podcasting that is really going to have that longevity, that's going to continue to work for you even when you're not showing up. And then pairing that with email marketing, which has such a higher return than social media. Like if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, I've talked about, different things with email marketing. Like I think it said that basically for every dollar you spend for email marketing, you earn like, I think it's $40 or something like that. That is such a high return, right? But also, I've mentioned it before, like one can have those one-on-one conversations with your people, really, get to know them, but also you can see who's clicking the links to check out your sales pages and see who your warmest leads are and everything. It's so good. And pairing those two together has honestly been so pivotal for my business. I've shared with you guys on here how literally I launched the Social Media Detox Club, my membership. I launched that just leveraging email and my podcasts. And I didn't even do a whole bunch of podcast episodes. I think I did maybe 2 or 3, however long the launch was. I think the launch was 2 weeks. So I would have done like 2 episodes. It was either 2 or 4. I can't remember if I was still doing 2 episodes a week during that time. But I leveraged those two platforms and I exceeded my launch goals. So I created this for the mama who she just wants to be able to show up in a way that she can commit to, but also on platforms that are reliable, where she's not battling the algorithm. She's not, trying to create so much content that sadly more than half of her audience doesn't even see. I think they say that typically only 10% of your Instagram followers see your content. When with email marketing, my open rate, it averages between 48% and 50%. So compared to social media, that is a much better time investment. And then my podcast, it converts so well. Literally, somebody finds my podcast and they binge the podcast and then they become a client. And it's such a quick turnaround. And so I want to show you how to do that. I want to show you how to simplify your marketing and sales through these two platforms. So if this sounds like, yes, Andrea, this is for me, I want to do this, you can go and check out and learn more about the offer, all the details, all that it includes. You can head over to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/social detox, and you can learn more about the offer, as well as there's an application. There are a total of 8 spots. 3 spots at the time of this recording have already been claimed, so there's only 5 spots left for this first round. Now, if you join by the end of the month, so before November 1st, if you join, you will save $150 and you will get the bonus of me doing a podcast audit. And that's the other thing with this offer. You do need to have a podcast. Now, if you launched a podcast a while back and you stopped doing anything with it, that is okay. We can revive that baby. We can rebrand it, rework it so that it is part of your business. But you have to have a podcast or have podcasting experience, because I'm not going to be going through the basics of launching a podcast or anything like that. So that is a requirement. For email marketing, you do have to have an email list. Now, it doesn't have to be a huge email list or anything like that. And even if you haven't emailed your list in a while, we will revive that email list. We will re-engage your community and everything. But you do need to have the basics down already. Again, this program is not for if you're just starting out. You need to be clear on who you're serving, how you're serving them, have a validated offer, and have the basics with your podcast and email list going. So head on over to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/social detox to learn more. Okay, I know this was a super long intro, but let's get into today's topic. So I'm going to be breaking down 3 stories you need to create an effective storytelling content strategy for podcasts and email marketing. So you guys know how much I love storytelling. It is so important. I feel like storytelling is how you really, one, connect with your people and find your people, right? Because we relate through stories. We develop those emotional connections. I'm thinking of a client right now who she created a piece of content, and it was around, she was working with a client and, sharing with that client how as a parent, we show our kids a lot of grace. But as a business owner, we don't show ourselves that same grace. And it was more detailed than that. But that piece of content moved me so much. One, I was on the verge of tears because I realized that I don't show myself a lot of grace as a business owner. But also, it was if she was selling something in that post, I would have been like, girl, take my money. Because that post felt like such a warm hug. It made me feel like I was in a safe space. It made me feel so good. And so that is why stories matter. Stories help your audience to connect with you on a human level. Stories are such a great way to simplify different concepts. We talk a lot about not using like jargon in your content, in your messaging, and stories are a great way to help you make sure you're not doing that. You can break down this maybe, more complex concept for your audience. Maybe it's a term that's generally used in your industry, but your audience, it goes over their head. But you can break it down in a simplified way through storytelling. It builds those connections and it builds that trust. Like I said about that client who created that piece of content, like I would like if she was selling something, like I would have pulled out my credit card and be like, sign me up. I want this right now because it just warmed my heart. And like I said, I felt safe. I felt like I'll be okay. Like it made me feel so good inside, but also it helped me realize something that I was being so hard on myself as a business owner and not showing myself grace. Like it was eye opening too. And so that is why you want to infuse storytelling into your content, especially like if you have a podcast or you're leveraging email marketing. Those stories build connections. Those stories they're so powerful. So, the three story types that you need to have when you're storytelling in your podcast and email content. So, this isn't an exhaustive list. This is just three of many. One of the things, like when you join the Social Detox Accelerator, I have, I call it a content prompts that you can use both for podcasting and emailing. And essentially, there are different prompts that are going to help you pull out these different stories, these different ideas for your podcast and email content. It is so good. It is what I use in my own business. It is how this is episode 204, and I still have hundreds of content ideas, both for my podcast and my email. My email, I send out 3 emails a week now, and I am not running out of content ideas. I pulled out 3 of the prompts from that doc just to kind of give you guys a taste. But the first one is your villain or origin story. And so I call it villain story because this was something my coach, Kay Hillman, I had created some content around a story when I first started my business and like an issue I had with a client after I transitioned to a mom of 2. Not going to go into the full story, but she was like, that is your villain story. And I was like, oh, I love that. I'm going to use that. But essentially, it is your story of why you do things the way you do now. That pivotal moment in your life or business as related to what it is that you do. That transforming moment where maybe you had this like major breakthrough or something. But that is essentially what it is, like that story, that specific moment. And it's so powerful. It speaks to the heart of your people, the people you're called to serve, the people who truly like, yes, she gets me. Like that was me. I'm going through that. And so it's so impactful because it shows people where you started. So kind of creating that relatability, but also you share how you overcame it. And so showing them like what is possible for them, what you can actually help them achieve when they work with you. So it's such a powerful story. And the thing is that you may have more than one. I have had multiple pivotal moments in my business from when I first started my business through the challenges I've shared with you guys, with my daughter when she had a seizure last year, us finding out my son was diagnosed with autism, different things that really kind of shaped how I run my business. So those stories, they're so good and they need to be shared. Now, one of the things I do want to, kind of preface here, I'm not saying air your dirty laundry. I'm not saying go and spill your guts out all the time. I see this a lot, especially Instagram stories. I've seen people crying on Instagram stories. I've seen people sharing how they're doing really badly in business and putting it all out there. I'm not saying do that. But what I am saying is that you can share those challenging times and the parts of the stories that you feel comfortable sharing, and then how you overcame it. I think that's what's missing a lot from storytelling is you're sharing the bad stuff, but you haven't overcame it yet. And I get transparency and different things like that. But if you're telling me you're struggling in an area that you're supposed to be supporting me with, I'm not going to feel comfortable investing in you. So, so just be mindful of that and really take some time and journal out these stories too. That helps a lot. Like just doing like a brain dump and then looking at the key pieces that you can pull out and share with your audience where it makes sense. So the next story type is relatable stories. So think about your own personal life, like your life outside of business, and pulling in stories from that. So for me, that looks a lot like sharing different stories about being a mom, like different things that I navigate as a mom of two littles. Also sharing about, being a mom of a child with special needs and running a business. So really pulling out those different stories. And these can be stories like in everyday life. Like I recently wrote an email about my experience with Coffee Bean. And it was like I got really good a good open rate. I think it was like 51%. But it was such an engaging story. I shared about the story, like how Coffee Bean, I discovered their iced chai latte and I tried it as is one time. It wasn't like it didn't have enough flavor for me. Like I could tell that it was like it just wasn't flavorful for me. And so the next time around, I asked to add oat milk to it just to give it a little bit more flavor. And so that first time I asked, I was, met with, oh, this doesn't come with milk. And I was like, I know, I just want it for the flavor. And literally every single time I would go to Coffee Bean, I would be met with that. And it didn't matter who the cashier was. Like every single time was a different cashier. It was the same Coffee Bean, but it was a different cashier. And I was met with that. And it was so annoying to me that I was like, you know what? I'm not going here anymore. And they would have had a lifelong customer because I would go every Sunday. After I finished shopping at Trader Joe's, there was a Coffee Bean right there. I would stop there, get my Coffee Bean on my way to Target to finish up my grocery shopping for the week. And I just stopped going because I was tired of them bugging me about the milk when one, it benefited them because my drink was more expensive, but also it's my drink. Like, is there a rule or a law that says that I can't add oat milk to my iced chai latte? But anyways, I made the connection to, the customer journey and the customer experience and how, yes, we do want to get more leads in our business, but we also need to make sure we're taking good care of our current clients so that way they can continue to work with us. That way we aren't always searching for that next client, but creating lifelong clients. And so it was a really good email. I think I might actually make it public and I'll link it in the show notes so you guys can read it if you're not on my email list. But that was just an everyday story. Like it wasn't super significant, but I was able to pull out a really good lesson from it because it's true. Like we're business owners too, just like Coffee Bean is a business. We have our businesses and we really have to think about not just the customer journey, getting the people in to work with us, but the after. Even after we've delivered that service, how can we keep them in our world? How can we create such a phenomenal experience that they want to keep working with us? So anyways, let me get off because I'm going on a tangent, but just those little things in everyday life, mistakes made, lessons learned, just creating those relatable stories. Okay, and then the last story type is client stories. So this is so important. Client stories are one, your social proof, but also it shows people what it's like to work with you. and what results they can possibly achieve when they work with you. Now, you guys know I've had a few episodes where I've interviewed clients on my podcast, and that's them sharing their story. Even in my email content, I'm always sharing client stories and different things like that. And so this can look differently. There's so many different client stories you can share. You can share client wins. You can share client before and after. You can share client mindset shifts. You can share, the gaps a client had before they started working with you, and then how you help them transform, change to achieve their goal. You can share about client objections. The list goes on and on and on. And I actually get a lot of content ideas from my clients, just questions they ask. Like, you've heard in previous episodes where I'm like, oh yeah, this is a question that one of the mamas inside of, the membership asked me. And so you can get a lot of content from your clients. Okay, so as a quick recap, the 3 types of stories that you need to include in your podcast content and your email content are your villain or origin story, relatable stories, so just thinking about stories in your everyday life, things that come up, and then client stories. Now, I hope that you guys pulled out your notebook and pen and took notes. And if you didn't, listen to this episode again, because if you just sit down and think about these 3 different story types, I promise you will have 3 months worth of content mapped out right then and there, probably even more, because there's so many little moments where, with the relatable stories, you think is insignificant, but it's not. It is relatable. Or even the client stories. Maybe you think it's not a major client win, but the thing is that people want realistic client stories to see realistic results. What is typical? So it doesn't have to be, oh, this client had a 50K launch. No, this client, after going 6 months without signing a client, signed her first 2 clients after working with me for a month or 2. It can be that simple. Don't think it has to be this extraordinary, out of this world thing, because realistically, depending on where your ideal client is at in their journey, they may see that and think man, I'll never achieve that, or I'm not there yet. But those relatable wins, those where it's wow, I can do that. And if I get that support, I really will be able to do that, So anyways, if you are looking to go into 2025 and really start leveraging podcasting and email marketing in your business, making those your primary platforms where you are attracting, nurturing, and converting your ideal clients into your offers. And the podcast, that's going to be your visibility right there. You're going to learn about podcast SEO. You're going to learn how to effectively grow your podcast audience with the right people. It's going to be so good. But pairing that with email marketing, baby, you are going to be unstoppable. So if that is what you want to do, head on over to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/social detox to submit your application for the Social Detox Accelerator today. If you join before November 1st, you save $150 and you will get a podcast audit. A free podcast audit where I dive into your podcast. I give you feedback on what to change. And that can be what you're working on before we get started with the accelerator in January 2025. All right, that is it for this episode. I'll talk to you later, Mama. Well, Mama, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me. If you enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a favor and follow the podcast and leave a review? Hitting that follow button and sharing your thoughts about the podcast are the best ways to ensure that other mamas like you find this show. Your review also lets me know if you're enjoying this podcast, so make sure to share your thoughts before you go. All right, Mama, I'll catch you in the next episode.